You're all like first semester 1Ls. You got quiet before I even asked. Good morning. My name is Chris Guthrie. I'm a professor of law and the dean of Vanderbilt Law School. On behalf of the law school, I'm truly delighted to welcome you to our first global debate. This debate, as you know, addresses the continuing viability of record labels, which turns out to be a very timely topic. It is fitting that we host this first global debate at Vanderbilt, blocks away from Music Row here in Music City. This event gives me an opportunity to celebrate Vanderbilt Law School's intellectual property program, which is ably co-directed by Professors Danielle Gervais and Steve Hetcher. In addition to Danielle and Steve, Professor Sean Seymour, Professor Michael Bressman, and a cadre of superb affiliated faculty from Nashville and elsewhere around the country provide an outstanding intellectual property curriculum to JD and LLM students at Vanderbilt who come to us from all over the globe. This debate also gives me an opportunity to celebrate our partnership with the University of Melbourne Law School. The University of Melbourne is a world-class university with a first-rate law school, and we are very, very proud to claim Melbourne as a core partner. For making this event possible, I'd like to thank Vanderbilt University, the University of Melbourne, all of our speakers, and especially Professors Danielle Gervais of Vanderbilt and Andrew Christie of Melbourne. Will you please join me in welcoming Professor Gervais to the podium?
Thank you, Chris. So, let me just, add my word of welcome to the first Melbourne Vanderbilt Global Debate. Some of you will remember that we've had debates using a similar format before, but this is the first using or based on the Melbourne Vanderbilt partnership. So let me do one quick thing here. So, you might think I'm trying to get our debaters' juices flowing, but in fact I'm also playing this song for a very special reason. I want to recognize that both on the internet watching live, but specifically in this room, there are many VIPs, and I want to ask Eddie Schwartz, the songwriter who penned the song we just heard, to stand and be recognized. Thank you, Eddie, for being here. And Luigi Palombi from Australia, who will be speaking tomorrow to a faculty workshop. Welcome, Luigi, to Vanderbilt. Welcome to all of you watching here and online as well. So our topic today is, do we still need record companies? And there's several things embedded in those words, and I'm sure our debaters will want to expand on that. We certainly all know in this room that the industry is changing in large part due to the internet. So what is the role of record companies in this almost exclusively online and wireless environment? So our other VIPs today is our great cast of debaters. We invited people with great expertise as academics or as professionals, and stars who have also published, and my seminar students here know two of our debaters very well for having gone through their paper with a very fine-tooth comb. Let me introduce our debaters. So starting from our guests from Melbourne, Australia, Professor Andrew Christie, who was already introduced by the Dean and is really also a co-organizer of this event. Thank you for being here, Andrew. Andrew Christie is the Davies Collison Cave Chair of Intellectual Property at Melbourne Law School. Also from Melbourne, Mr. Andrew Pollock from Mashalls and Dent, a law firm, but also a recording artist with his band, The Dead Leaves. By the way, you'll notice that I give the short version. You all have their full bios in front of you, so I'm only really giving name and affiliation. Our U.S. debaters in alphabetical order, Mr. Brian Day of Orrick, based in Menlo Park, Silicon Valley, and also the author of a paper that my students know very well. Lital Helman, the other author of a famous paper at Vanderbilt, is a fellow, Kernochan Center Fellow at Columbia Law School. And Mr. Terry Hemmings is the CEO of Provident Music Group, part of Sony Music Entertainment. And last but not least, Timothy Lee, that many of you will know from his contributions to Ars Technica, and I know many of you also follow him on Twitter. So, I don't want to take more of the precious time for the debate. I've already told the debaters we have a big class ending in 3 minutes, so I expect that there'll be a lot of people will come in. I know it'll be a little disruptive, but I think we can probably get going and wait for them. So let me just put this back on. So we're inspired by the words of John Milton: where there's much desire to learn, there of necessity will be much arguing, much writing, many opinions for opinion and good men is but knowledge in the making. So this is hopefully what will inform our debate. The rules are as follows. We have a proposition. We still need record companies. It will be debated using the following format. One team will argue for this proposition, the other against. Each participant will now be given, as soon as I'm done explaining the rules, 3 minutes for an opening statement. We will alternate between the two teams. After the 6 opening statements, each participant will be given up to 1 minute, sorry for the typo there, to comment or respond to anything that the others have said using the same order. And then it'll be up to you to ask questions, and participants can also ask questions of each other. At the end of the debate, each participant will have up to 90 seconds for a closing statement, and then you will use your clickers to vote on questions. You will have not 15, actually I think we tweaked it to 20 seconds, and you have to wait for my announcement that polling is open. You can only vote once. Your vote is final, and you will be voting on the proposition itself, in other words, which side convinced you. And I will also be presenting an award to the best debater, a very special award that I'll explain a little later, and that will be up to you as well. So again, these are the two votes. Basically, one of the proposition, the second on the best debater, and is a possible second vote on the second question should there be a tie. We already have the experts. So before we start, I want to do a test, make sure the system works. And I'm doing this under the supervision of PC Hatchett from IT. So let's make sure that the system is in fact working. Please take your clickers, and I'm going to ask you to vote now on this proposition. Which of these is the best dessert? 1 for Mississippi mud pie, 2 for key lime pie, and 3 for apple pie. You now have 20 seconds. This seems to be working. I'm happy to report. 5 seconds. So the technology works, and we're glad to learn that apple pie is the best dessert. Okay, so this is working. We are good. So we will now start. I will be timekeeper, moderator, and with that I'm going to ask somebody on the pro side to begin your 3 minutes. Whenever you're ready.
I'm ready. Participating in a debate about the future of the record industry to me is no different from participating in a debate about the future of the prostitution industry. I have no vested interest in either. I'm not a prostitute, I don't use their services, I'm not a music creator, and I don't listen to music. You might think that last statement's a bit outrageous, but I don't own an MP3 player, I don't have any MP3 tracks on any digital device whatsoever, I hardly listen to music. Now it's important I tell you that at the start for 2 reasons. One is, if during the course of this debate I say something you think is either really smart or naive, it'll be naive. But what I bring to this debate is the fact that I'm completely dispassionate, and not everyone here will be, objective, clinical, and I would say as a result of that, correct. Now, my dispassionate, objective, clinical and correct view is that the industry will not just survive but thrive. Why? Because the need for the record labels is essential, both from the supply side and the demand side. From the supply side, the creator artists, they need and want record labels because record labels are the venture capitalists of the music industry. Just as we need and innovators need venture capitalists to invest, to spread risk, to bring products to market, have 9 failures and 1 success, so creators of music need venture capitalists called record labels to invest, bring products to market, spread risk for the 9 or 99 losses for the 1 success. But they're also absolutely necessary from the demand side, from the listener side as well. Grace Note's database tells me they have over 100 million tracks on their database. Now, without record labels, you're going to have a hard time finding the music you want to listen to and that is warranted your time. What you need is a Google of music, and that's what record labels are. They do all the hard work for you. They do the searching. They decide what looks good and what's worth investing in, what's worth you listening to. And you don't have to go and sample 100 million tracks to find what you want to listen to. Record labels will suggest to you what you should be listening to. So for the fact that this industry role is both demanding and necessary from the supply side and the demand side, I have no hesitation whatsoever in saying that we both need them, we must have them, and the future for them is very bright.
Thank you. We'll start.
All right, so can everybody hear me? Okay, so I'd like to sort of set the stage for this debate by talking about the economics of the recording industry. And so he mentioned labels being sort of the venture capitals of the music industry, and I think that's a good description of how labels worked in the 20th century. So the core competence of a record label is to manufacture these plastic discs with music encoded on them and ship them around the country. And in the 20th century, this was a really important function because that's how people got copies of music. And the key thing about this process is it has a lot of economies of scale. So producing 1 CD is a very expensive process, but once you've done that, it's very cheap to produce additional copies. And so the way you make money is you try to sell a large number of them so you can spread that fixed cost over a large number of copies. So if you're making thousands or tens of thousands of CDs, of course then you need to be able to sell them, and so to do that you need a national distribution network, you need trucks, you need relationships with retailers and so forth. And of course it doesn't make that much sense to have all these CDs on the shelf if nobody knows about them and is going to come and buy them. So you need a marketing, a national marketing campaign. You need ads in magazines and newspapers. You need to call up DJs and lobby them to play your music and so forth. And these are all interconnected. It doesn't make sense to do the manufacturing of the CDs if you don't have a way to distribute and market them. It doesn't obviously make sense to do the marketing if you don't have a product to market, etc. And to do all these interconnected functions, you needed a large bureaucracy. You needed people to do all these things, and that took a lot of people, it took a lot of capital. And so, as he said, the venture capital function is very important. But this had a couple of important implications. One is that labels tend to be very risk averse. You only want to sign up an album if you think that it's going to sell thousands or tens of thousands of copies. And so if you have a niche artist or one where you think there's going to be a lot of it has an unusual sound that you're not sure if it's going to sell, you're going to be very reluctant to sign them up. And relatedly, the labels demand a lot of control because it would be a shame if you ran off 10,000 copies of the CD and then you found out, oh, the band decided they didn't want to tour after all. And so you want to structure the deal so that the band has an incentive to participate in the marketing campaign to help sell the album and so forth. Okay, so as you said, I only have a few more seconds, but the internet changes everything. And the way to think about this is to imagine you're a small garage band just starting out, and in the 20th century it would be very hard to convince a label to let you distribute music to a large audience. With the internet, this becomes much easier because there's no downside. If you have an album you've maybe made in your garage and you want to get it to an audience, you can just put it on iTunes, you can put it on a website, and so this allows a lot more risk taking and a lot more artist control, which my panelists will expound on.
Thank you.
Good morning. Can everybody hear me? It's good to be here today for what I think is a very interesting topic and something that I think is a timely and important discussion. I would like to sort of take a step back and consider the idea of whether record labels are necessary as a question of really whether record labels are necessary to our music industry and society. And I think that despite the digital revolution, the answer to that question is quite clearly yes. Record labels continue today to create the most demanded and the most consumed recorded music in the United States, if not the world. Record labels invest millions of dollars in not only their artists, but in the larger economy. And so I think that they continue to serve a very important function that hasn't been diminished. And I think it's important to note that by saying that record labels are necessary to our music industry and society is not to say that artists can't exist without a record label, that they can't go out on their own and obtain or promote and distribute their music in any way that they would like. I think that creates greater musical diversity, and I think everyone would agree that society is undoubtedly benefited by that sort of activity. Whether they'll be successful or whether they'll be able to rival the success that record labels have been able to produce both online and off, I think is an entirely different question, perhaps a more important question. But to say that record labels are necessary, I think, is to simply recognize that after nearly a decade of Napster, we still have record labels producing, funding, and distributing the most popular content in the United States, if not the world. So I'll end with that.
Everyone hear me? Yeah, we're good? All right, do we still need record labels? I'm not sure we do. Don't get me wrong, labels are great. I'm signed to one myself. Now, Terry, I'm not taking this personally, and they can do some wonderful things, but we do need to face up to a few realities. Firstly, people of our generation, for most of the people in the room, no longer view recorded music as a valuable commodity in and of itself. That horse bolted with the development of file sharing. Now, while I believe that there are ways to monetize recorded music, for example, by way of premium physical product editions that are bundled with additional content, or simply as a loss leader to promote other revenue streams like live performance and those sorts of aspects, the fact remains that file sharing is progressively destroying the physical distribution market, leaving labels to play the roles of really a bankroll and a marketing department on what is really a dwindling and increasingly irrelevant revenue source. As Rick Rubin put it, that business model is dead. Now, I personally think that we should be looking at a statutory private use license, but that's far beyond the scope of my 3 minutes. The second thing we need to face up to is that when boiled down to essentials, developing bands particularly, but bands in general, need money and influence to build their brand. Traditionally, those have been byproducts of the exploitation of copyright, and so record labels have had a key role to play there. But at least in Australia, and I'm sure it's the case in the States as well, the drop in sales has translated into a shift in consumer spending. Fans are still spending money on music, they're just spending that money differently. They won't buy a record, but they won't think twice about spending $300 on a festival ticket or a ticket to a headline touring band. They'll buy merch, they'll consume artist-endorsed products, and they'll watch hit films and TV programs and consuming the synchronised music along the way. What does that mean? It just means that the pool of industry players with the required money and influence to actually develop a band is much wider than it was. So yes, Andrew, the point is venture capital is crucially important, but record labels are no longer the sole source of that required capital and will continue to be less and less that sole source. So what does that mean for deals moving forward? Simply put, I think the decline of revenue from sales gives us a really, it's a watershed moment. It gives us an opportunity to rethink the way that we actually structure our deals. If consumers are spending money on artists in different ways, then the people who are participating in that profit share need to have a seat at the table. The Live Nation deals with artists like U2 provide an extreme example of how that can work at the top end of the market, but the same point applies to developing bands as well. Artists need to structure a deal with a group of companies that view a product as a holistic brand and are able to bring different skill sets to grow the overall pie. That might involve the labels taking some tasks, whether it be back-end accounting and some promotional things, but if other companies can do those tasks better, viral marketing companies to do the promotion, then get them involved. So if labels have a role to play, it's part of a broader joint venture, bringing some skill sets and delivering services on that basis and sharing revenue from all of those aspects. But is that really a record label as we know it in the traditional sense? I don't think so.
Well, I think, you know, to avoid being redundant, I won't repeat the many obvious reasons that we need record labels. I would say that we have to make a case, and I say we, you know, representing someone who's worked in and out of a record label and in this business for 25 years, for our relevance by staying good business people. You know, all businesses are required over time to evolve and to change their models and their approach to business in order to be profitable. Relevant both to the consumer and to the artists that we serve. So our business depends on our business in many ways. And so, as my colleagues have pointed out, many things have changed. It has in fact changed everything, but everything changes constantly, and so the pace of change has quickened, of course. Has been challenged, but for the most part, the reason that artists want to be at record labels is so that every morning and think about them and have passion for the music. And I've worked with in and out of the business for years, music fans. Grew up appreciating and listening to music, and setting aside the need for capital and argument that record labels should exist, just passion work on these records and for these. Anyways, the most important element of what we offer to the artist community and ultimately to the consumer.
Thank you.
Ready? Set?
Yep.
Go. Okay, so thank you for being here. Tim talked to you before about the economic point, explaining that in today's economy, it's not so clear that we need record labels, especially not the way they exist today. Then Andrew came up and explained that the business model should be changing, and the new business model that we're going to build, we are not likely to see record labels the way they now function, and we don't need them. What I want to show you is that if we do keep the model the way it is now, with record labels being so dominant in the industry, we're having huge costs to our society and to the system. And I want to talk about three costs. The first one is the cost to artists' interest and their incentives to create. Because in today's recording contracts, when you as an artist sign a contract, you give away the copyright in your record to the record label. And not only the copyright to the record that you are creating now, that you've already been creating, but for the 6 or 7 albums you're going to create from now on. Not only this, but the contracts also give a lot of the money, a lot of the revenues, not to the artist, but to the record label, so that artists usually gets anything between 7 and 25%. So in this reality, the artist has very low incentive to create, which is the reason why the old copyright system has been created in the first place, to create an incentive to create. And also, I think we have a moral problem when we don't let artists reap what they have sowed. So this is the first cost. The second cost that we're having is cost to diversity of music, because today record labels turn to the mainstream taste, and this is their incentive. They want to invest in the records that are most likely to return the investment, and this is the mainstream taste. But we pay the price for having more music in the mainstream taste than we want to have. We want to have more diverse music. We want to have the music that will cater to different people and express more people. And record labels in the current form and with the controlling position they have over the market do not let us have enough diversity as we want to have. And we heard from Brian that indeed it is artists can do it alone today, but it's very hard to succeed as an artist. And this leads me to the third point, which is creating of barriers to entry. Because today record labels and the record labels, the big four, control more than 80% of the copyrights. Because of what we said, because of what we said before, that they take the copyright from the artists, they control most of them. And in this way, they can also control who is going to be able to distribute the music. So when Napster and Aimster came up and they tried to negotiate with the labels and tell them, we will pay you money, but let us also distribute the money under different terms, the record labels were not willing to do that. And in this sense, we harm also innovation and the ability of companies to create other distribution tools. And for all these reasons, we beg you to oppose. Thank you.
And now the up to 1 minute response.
Okay. Andrew, I don't think you actually meant to say surely that people don't value music in and of itself. That's just patently false. They do. What the problem is when you're talking about the consumers is not that they don't value it. They value it so much they don't want to pay for it. And one of the issues we're going to have to work out is why that's the case and how to overcome that. So you wouldn't have 100 million tracks on Grace Notes if people didn't value music as and of itself, as you said. So I disagree with you fundamentally on that point.
All right, so I want to comment on this idea that labels are the Google of music. And I'm going to channel Clay Shirky here. The 20th century model of media was what Shirky calls the filter then publish process. You have a hierarchical centralized institution like a book publisher or a record label that decides which stuff is going to get published, and then you as the consumer just have to take whatever they dish out. The internet model is the publish then filter model. In this model, anybody can publish whatever they want, and then there's a wide variety of filters. There's the actual Google, there's Twitter and Facebook, there's MySpace, there's various music blogs and so forth. And you get to decide not only which content to consume, but also which filters to have. And this is a dramatic improvement because obviously you can still, if you choose to use the labels as your filter, you're welcome to do that. But because there's a much wider variety of content out there, you can choose some other filter if there's another filter that serves your needs better.
Want to respond to sort of this general idea and something that I think we need to be careful of, which is that there are, and I think it's very easy to say, to look at and say, well, it's very hard to monetize content online anymore. You can leverage that content, that intellectual property, in order to sell physical goods. You can use it to sell concert tickets. You can use it to sell merchandise. And I think that we have to be careful, and it's a bit dangerous to say that, because what we really could end up, if we carry that to its logical extreme, is that intellectual property serves no purpose any longer on the internet except to the extent you can leverage it to sell physical product. And really, in that circumstance, we're back to a 17th century economy where only physical products have any value, and intellectual property has no value outside of what it can do to promote the sale of physical products. And to me, that sounds like a huge step backwards. It doesn't sound like progress to me. And so I think we need to be careful in a short-term solution where, yes, it is possible to leverage intellectual property to sell physical product. Record labels have deals with Live Nation, have merchandising entire arms on the company to do just that. But I think we need to be careful about writing off their attempts to really protect intellectual property online and assign value to it and protect it. Thank you.
Actually, really briefly, Andrew, it's a point well taken. When I was talking about the consumers don't value it anymore, I'm purely pointing to the fact that we don't pay for it. So I think we're in furious agreement on that point. But I still think the thrust of that still stands. One thing I'd just like to touch on in the context of both Terry and Brian talking about the key role that labels have in bringing a product out to market and dealing with that filtering side of things. That's certainly true, and there's aspects of that labels do very well. But we need to keep in mind that that progressively, I know even from my own release experiences, that labels are realising the limitations of what they can do, particularly in the promotion and marketing space, and are outsourcing that to third-party companies who do that job much better. They realise that they can't tap into the kind of influential tastemaker blogs that young hip promotion companies can do, and so they pay other people to do it. But it really begs the question: if that task and various other tasks that traditionally fell under the umbrella of what a record label can do can be done better elsewhere, surely we should be bringing these people into the process and getting people who can do what they can do best.
I'd like to just quickly address the notion that anyone gives away their rights. Anyone who signs with a record label or a publishing company is making a choice to partner with that entity, and vice versa, and typically do so to achieve three things. One is an exploitation partner, someone who believes in their music and believes that it should be as many places as possible, and sets out to pursue that, whether it's elsewhere. Two, the enforcement of those rights, someone to stand behind that artist or writer and prevent people from stealing it to the extent that we can. properly or in a manner or context that it wasn't intended. And then the collection of the money at some point, we hope, is required. And to do that on behalf of an artist or writer who doesn't have the reach worldwide to collect their money or the resources to do that, labels and the label system provide that for them.
Thank you. So when we answer this debate, we have to look at what kind of functions do record labels do for us, and do we still need them? So what did we hear from all the sides? We heard that they do selections for us. They tell us what to listen to. I don't know if we want them to tell us what to listen to, or we want more diverse music that we can choose from. And in the internet age, we can do that. And we have the function of distribution that, as Tim showed you, we don't really need anymore any other people distributing CDs for us. We have peer-to-peer systems to do it ourselves. And then we have the function of venture capitalists. Again, if we allow more business models and new business models to come up, this will not be as needed. And definitely, the last point, definitely with a point of choice, I don't think it's possible to speak about meaningful choice to artists when we have such a centralized, vertically integrated, horizontally integrated industry that controls 80% of the market, and then they tell the artists that you can make a choice, when actually we do not see so many alternatives rising. So this is what we need to create.
Okay, so we have a lot of good ideas and arguments on the table. Now it's your turn to feed the debate. I will open it up to the floor, and then I'll also ask our debaters if they want to ask questions of each other later. But let me open it up to all of you first. Who wants to get going? Sheila, I see your hand going up. Not surprised. Go ahead.
Quickly, just a question for Ms. Helman, referencing that artists typically only get 7 to 20% of the gross profits from their records. Is there any
25.
7 to 25. Is there any proof that artists are able to attain that kind of success without the distribution channels and marketing that these record companies provide? And furthermore, talking about the kind of marketing outlets that Mr. Pollock was referencing, are these outlets currently available? Are there success stories where people have been able to compete with the existing model and being able to use this? And is there a reason why these models can't coexist with the existing record labels, why record labels need to succeed in order for us to succeed?
So before you, I'll also give you a chance.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for this question. So first, let's look at the numbers, because when we say 7 to 25%, this is the basis. But then you have to pay and you have deductions for everything that the record labels did for you. So if they invested in promotion of your music, this goes down of your share, not of their share. If they if they did other things to do, if they distributed your music, again, this goes out of your share. And also, they still have sometimes in the record deals, it allows them to deduct money from your share for breakage of CDs along the way. We don't even have a CD, but this clause still exists. So the 7 to 25% is not really what they get, and the data we have today is that 99.8% of artists are in debt to their record labels, and not the other way around. So if you ask me if we can get to these numbers in a different model, I think the answer is quite clear that we possibly can. And I think it also answers your question whether we can do something better, or we can do something complementary to the existing copyright system. Because I think, yes, I think that the recording business in a way is a two-sided market, if you know the term. It means that on the one hand they turn to the consumers to consume the music, but on the other hand it's very important to them that artists will still come and sign with them and not go to other alternatives. So they have a very strong incentive to make the consumer side more limited, so that artists will still need to go through them. This is why I think, in terms of creating a complementary system, I don't know if we need to get rid of record labels at all. I think this might be too extreme, but we definitely do need to get rid of the idea that the main pillar that we have in the industry is the record labels. This is the industry. Artists come from this side, content goes from that side, but this is the main basis. This, I think, is an idea of the past. that it's a good time that it will go away. Did I answer you? Okay.
Can I just add something to that quickly? You were asking about are there any success stories that that illustrate how it can be done. Well, first of all, before I touch that, I just make the point that in terms of whether this model, the traditional model, will be whether we deliberately wipe it out. I think it's more just the case that over time, with revenues dwindling the way they will, it's the nature of the market will see those kinds of deals being restructured. It's just it won't be sustainable in the long run. But in terms of some success stories, I'm not sure if you'd be familiar with an artist, John Butler Trio, a Western Australian artist, but he never signed with a record label, never signed with a publisher. He managed to build it from the ground up, largely through creating hype through the festival circuit, and sort of slowly leveraging that from there and engaging third-party sync agents who would just take a flat cut of the synchro deals that were done. John is, he's certainly a very savvy businessman, but he makes a stupendous amount of money from the various revenue sources, not solely from sales, but from touring, from sync, from merch, everything. They are doing very, very well for themselves, and and have been doing so for quite some time. It's not to say that it is easy to do it that way. In fact, it is exceptionally difficult. I don't want anyone to take away from what I've been saying that these alternative models are a click the finger option. They're not. But the reality is that certainly for developing artists, the key thing to get things moving and to start snowballing and building the brand is hype, really. That's what labels ideally will want you to have hype before they sign you, and increasingly so these days. It gets harder and harder to be signed unless you have a buzz in your own city and reasonable following elsewhere, and hopefully a bit of radio play to actually build something. But building it from nothing with no hype is an incredibly difficult thing, and that is difficult. That's as hard for labels as it is for artists independently or for third-party marketers. It's that sort of intangible quality that labels would perhaps like to give the impression, and certainly and equally, I guess managers and everyone in the industry would like to give the impression they can create hype. You can't. It's sort of you can build on it, but that's the key thing. That's the really tricky part of it all.
I just there are bad examples in every business, and certainly in the record business, of contracts that don't reflect the current environment, that don't reflect future, and so as was pointed out, there are some old clauses and some old contracts that are arcane in many ways and don't reflect where we are today. There is no breakage in digital, accurate. However, I think any business won't survive unless it begins to evolve and become more fair and more reflective of the current environment. And so contracts are changing. They're changing very rapidly. Most artists that sign with a major label are well represented by lawyers, and so those things have gone away in most cases over the past few years. So all contracts aren't bad, and quite good for artists and writers in the current environment.
Add one thing to sort of the discussion on royalties as well. I was talking to Terry about the average royalties that are paid to, the advances that are paid to recording artists up front. And I think this is often overlooked, but record labels invest an average of $200,000 for personal expenses alone to an artist upon signing. They provide another $100,000 to $200,000 to the artist in order to record their album. They then invest another $300,000 on average in the promotion and marketing of that that first record, including tour support, because it's often not known that artists lose money on their initial tour because it often costs more to go out on the road for an emerging artist than it does than they actually make. And so I think, when you talk about recoupment, this is all true, that those monies are recouped against any future royalties that the artist earns, certainly. But if we're talking about allowing an artist the opportunity to really focus on their craft, to really become a professional artist, to record an album that's of very high quality, that Americans and consumers worldwide have come to expect professional content and culture and artists who have the ability to go tour. I have yet to see any viable alternatives in the marketplace to challenge this very large amount of money that's given to artists up front. And if the artist fails and the artist does not become successful, as 9 out of 10 do, the amount that the artist has to repay is 0. The record label takes the entire loss on that. So, artists take a very calculated risk in signing with a record label. I think it's telling that a recent poll on Digital Music News found that 75% of on-site artists would like to be signed to a major record label, not an independent, but a major record label, especially because of the type of investment that I've just described.
Please, yes. Please identify yourself.
Pepper, Assistant Director of Kernochan for Art Technica, Collison. In which regime would Bob Dylan most likely succeed today if he started his career?
Question for anyone in particular?
I'd like to hear both sides. So, would a label sign Bob Dylan today and promote his career? And could Bob Dylan get the scale that he got when he was signed early in his career? So,
do you mind saying a little bit more about why Bob Dylan specifically?
I consider Bob Dylan to be innovation. So not just do we need them, but which system produces innovation? So there's an argument that large organizations that can afford to invest, have the capital to do so, can take risks with innovation. And then we have the other argument that innovation comes from the margins, from less capitalized businesses. So if Bob Dylan represents innovation, we have other artists like that, perhaps that are not in mainstream. Which system is likely to promote that kind of innovation? Anyone wants to go first?
I'm happy to.
Sorry? Yes.
Pose an answer. I think that record labels, especially in the past, and I think Dylan might be an example, Springsteen might also be an example of artists who really had to develop a career. That their first album was not necessarily a huge success, and they relied upon the funding that record labels were able to provide them over the course of several albums, and the continuing support that they gave them in order to be able to really build up that fan base and eventually become the very successful artists that they are now and that they were then. Whether or not they would still be able to sustain a career for a course of, I think, 6 to 8 albums, where the first are not commercially successful, I think is questionable. However, I would say that that's more due to the fact that record labels don't have the capital funding that they once did. And whether or not you think that an artist will be able to utilize mediums like YouTube and Twitter in order to build an audience that will rival that of a record label, I think is sort of a daunting question. And I don't know that we want to leave our musical heritage, our culture, in that unknown.
Just to add to that, I think I think a major label would sign Bob Dylan, but I think Bob Dylan probably would have, if it was 2011 now, Bob Dylan would have utilised something along the lines of YouTube and those sorts of things to get a product which is not necessarily immediately commercially viable, but strikes a chord with a sector of the population, to get that message out directly. That would most likely be reflected in a substantial number of hits to those YouTube videos, and I can guarantee you someone at one of the majors will be scouring YouTube to see what videos are getting high hit counts. So I think that example gives an illustration, certainly at the moment, how that there in the current model there's certainly room for both channels. The question really is that moving forward, what kind of structure is going to be sustainable and viable, and how's that going to work for the artists and the people who work for them?
Can I follow up on that, moderator's privilege, about the industry was sometimes simplistically perhaps depicted as kind of the music-making craft combined with the distribution network. And now obviously the first part's still there, somebody needs to make the music, but the other part's gone away and it's all social media. And so the question is, that something that you read quite a bit is, well, the record companies are just a player, but they don't have a natural claim to this reconfigured industry, which is music making and social media. And the social media people have just as much of a claim to whatever the industry is going to look like. We hear that quite a bit, that it's all about Facebook, and it's no longer about selling CDs. Is that true? Anyone want that? It's an easy question. No. It kind of follows up on Bob Dylan being on YouTube and Facebook. And are record companies supposed to do that for artists? Do they want to?
Well, put it this way: I know I can tell you that that labels spend substantially less time and money focusing on the traditional traditional promotional streams than they once did. The idea of doing long lead publicity on a record and putting up bill posters for new album releases these days is kind of it still happens, but it gets far less focused. The promotion and marketing teams working for these labels are people of the ages of you and I who are ultimately very familiar with social networking and how to leverage that. How to leverage tastemaker blogs and those sorts of things, because those key sources feed back into the industry, and if other stakeholders in touring companies, high-profile artist managers who have the role of advising them for big acts who to support their national tour, it feeds back into that discussion. So again, that sort of builds what I've been talking about before. It builds the hype, and the social media has proven to be far more effective these days at building hype than traditional promotion does. So the labels are onto that. It's not to say the labels have no ability to do that. They are certainly very aware of it, and that's the focus of their promo teams. But the fact remains that they are not the only players in that sphere. You're absolutely right. There are third-party people who are involved in social media who have a role to play.
So to add to that, so we were actually talking about this last night, and he was telling me, Andrew was telling me about, the labels will often have some, they realize they don't have the capacity to do this kind of grassroots marketing, but they'll find some, consulting company with younger people that help them do this and sort of create the impression that it's not major label music and that there's this authentic grassroots support. And so we've been hearing about how you need all this money to launch a major publicity campaign to build support for the artist, but in some sense, organizations have particular things they're good at and particular things they're not good at. I think traditional labels, they're good at shipping plastic discs around the country. They're not particularly good at getting people excited about something on Facebook and Twitter. And so they have lots of money, and so they can spend a lot of money to get some of the same result as an organic, interest in an artist through social media. But if you actually have an artist who is themselves or their manager is authentically good at reaching out to fans and building an audience online, you don't need a ton of money, because the whole point of social media is that it is decentralized. It is, you have, viral marketing isn't something that a media consultant comes up with. It's something that actually happens when music is really good. People, pass it from person to person. And so I think to say that we need all this money so that we can have a media campaign sort of gets it backwards. The really authentic online marketing doesn't require a lot of money, because it's about fans telling other fans about music they like. It's only if you're trying to sort of fake that process, you need to spend a lot of money sort of creating a sort of, not exactly authentic grassroots impression.
So let me ask on the other side first, and then Lital, I'll give you the floor.
Yeah, I'd like to know what market you're building through all this grassroots stuff. What are you selling? What's the market? You're using the phraseology market, and we all think market means about selling something, goods or services, but it's not goods, because it's not plastic boxes with plastic discs. It's not digital files, because people don't pay, won't pay. Cam paper won't pay. it can't be touring, right? You can't tell me that, I mean, it may be John Butler Trio, yes, but not just the average, but the 98% of artists aren't going to make money from touring. So you're creating a market, what? To flush your own hard effort and money down the toilet, or what? I mean, where's this market? What is this market that you're building with grassroots marketing?
That's a very, very good question, but the reality, it's a very good question. But that's the dilemma that artists and labels and across the industry are facing. The cold hard truth of it is that short of large-scale touring companies who are doing quite well off the small percentage of artists who are doing very, very well from touring. I'm talking about the U2s and the Jay-Z's of this world. But outside of that, it's a slog, and the revenues are dwindling from a number of sources. So yes, you're right in terms of ultimately what the market is. Yeah, there are fewer sources and dwindling revenue, but whether grassroots marketing is tapping into that or traditional forms is kind of irrelevant. It's grassroots marketing is arguably more effective at reaching out to people in their 20s. But we still face the issue of they've got to be paying for something. Yes, they're more likely to pay for touring and merchandise and those things than they are for digital files and physical discs. Whether that's ultimately sustainable for the industry in the long run is an open question, but that's a more existential issue for all of us, I think.
And also, this has nothing to do with labels. I mean, if it's the case that there's nobody's going to pay for stuff, then musicians aren't going to be able to make money whether they're doing it through a label or not. If there are business models but don't generate as much money, then you don't want to spend a ton of money on grassroots marketing. You want to have lower cost structures, which means if you can cut out some of the traditional label functions, then artists can make more money.
So we hear from the other side a lot. So what is your business model, and what would be the alternative? What would be the alternative? So 2 points for that. One, there are alternatives. There are a few alternatives. It's not true that there are no alternatives. One alternative is touring. We see, and I don't know if you saw the graph in The Guardian a few months ago of how recording revenues went down and touring revenues went up, and artists share much more in touring revenues than they do in recording revenues, so there is an added benefit to it. But so one, touring, I don't know if you can disregard it to that amount. That's a lot of money. Other options are things that were offered to the record labels for years and they refused to do. For example, to just offer us to pay them $30 a month, $40 a month, and just let us do whatever you want. Go to BitTorrent, go to, then it was Napster, go to or other things. Just do whatever we want, and we will just pay them a blanket fee, and leave us alone. Don't sue us. We're not here. We're doing whatever we want. You get your money. They were not willing to do that, but this is another alternative. And then there are other options that were offered in the literature. But another thing to point out is that you have to understand something about the economics of record labels. As we said, they see themselves as the center. Artists coming from one side, or content comes from the other side, and for them it's very important to keep this divide. They don't want to create business models that will allow artists to get to audiences without any intermediary, because they are the intermediary. So telling us you're not creating there are no business models, while they are themselves the one who block the alternative, or the maybe more straightforward alternative, or just getting rid of an intermediary and just getting with social media or other options from artists to audiences without intermediaries, because you're blocking this option. I think there is something wrong with this argument. The idea is not to keep the intermediary there. The idea is to allow us to think and to open our mind to all the options, including one that do not include intermediary in the middle.
Getting back to the original question.
There are many examples of artists who were unknown or didn't break until their third or fourth record, and so the label, the investment entity had to have great patience and interest and foresight to see that there was something ahead for them in order to stay with it. That process has changed with the advent of the internet and YouTube and many places that artists can sort of develop their craft, or at least find out if anybody cares. you know, they may be coming along later in that process to a record label. But there are two elements to that are important. One is, you know, a creative team that helps the artist develop their craft and introduce them to others in the community that they can learn from and co-write songs with, and you know, the things that are essential to developing their career as an artist. And then secondarily to that, the development of an audience, and many artists, as has been pointed out, can develop that audience themselves if they have the energy and the time and something unique to do that. They can get through the noise floor on the internet and the social media outlets and find a place for themselves. But still, our number one expense in in fan development, in finding an audience for music is at radio, surprisingly. It would probably surprise most of you. Getting the music in front of somebody is a very difficult task, particularly these days with so many places for people to find music, people to converse about it, and doing what in the 70s was building a buzz, which took place on the radio and touring in clubs and just regional and international, and now it can be everywhere instantly. And so finding a way through that noise is a very difficult challenge, and that's one of the important roles that record labels play, is not only helping develop the music, but finding a place that developed music can be heard and give an artist a chance at success.
So you mentioned getting through the noise. I think it's important to be clear here that what he's talking about by noise is other competing sources of music. What's happening is that the market is expanding. There's more music being produced than ever before, and as a consequence, you have stiffer competition, and not surprisingly, when you have more competition, profits are lower. It's harder to break in the market. But that process is good for consumers. It may or may not be good for musicians, but it's very clearly good for consumers that there's more music available, more kinds of music, more affordably.
Well, that would suggest that the only thing people do on
social media is listen to music. The noise is not just music. It's 1,000 other things that people are doing when they're online, whether it's Facebook or Twitter or any other activity online. So there's just more things for people to do at a time perhaps that they were listening to music or participating somehow in a discussion about it.
So we're spending a lot of time here talking about how we're going to market music and how we're going to make money on music. But I think that there's a different underlying question. I think that's what he was getting at over here when he said, what would happen with Bob Dylan today? Which is that, you know, for 50 years this country was on a regular basis, the music industry, putting out works of genius that will be listened to, you know, for decades. And that's just not really happening anymore. And the question is, do we think that there aren't geniuses anymore that are making, you know, that have that musical genius, or do you think that we just don't have a system that can bring that to the forefront anymore? Have we lost the ability to identify and foster really brilliant artists the way that we used to be able to do it? And it seems like that's the problem, is that we can't take a Bob Dylan and put him on American Idol or put him on tour with Taylor Swift, and you know, and then he's going to be the next success. We've lost that predictability and that ability to you know, to bring new brilliant people to the popular world. Who wants it first?
Well, there you go, because
I think, you know, we discussed this earlier. The R&D process, is very, very expensive, and so there's no question that fewer and fewer new artists are getting to the market, and a great deal of the reason for that is that people aren't paying for the music, and so not only can the labels simply not afford to invest in new artist development in the manner of the past, but the artists themselves can't afford to commit full time to their craft and any sort of living or lifestyle. It really is a serious problem.
So, Tim, you want before, does that relate to your publishing filter as opposed to filter and publish?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. So I think there's a hindsight bias problem here, right? I mean, if you had asked, so now everybody listens to Bob Dylan, everybody agrees that Bob Dylan was a great artist, and so it's easy to say, well, that was the 60s great artist. Nowadays, but if you asked in the 1960s, certainly some people were listening to Bob Dylan. He was a reasonably popular artist, but he wouldn't necessarily have been universally, you know, if you'd asked older people who's the great artists today. Very few people would have said Bob Dylan. So I suspect there are people making music today that are making what in 2050 will be seen as the great, music of the early 21st century. But it just takes a little bit of time to filter through. And one of the things that has changed is that it used to be that because you only had a few record labels, there was a relatively small amount of music that got a huge audience. And now what you have is you have many, many more subgenres. So I'll bet you there are many people in this room who have individual artists that maybe the rest of us haven't heard of, but they personally think is really, really great. And it takes a little longer for the best artists to sort of to sort of over time be seen as the great artists. So say if we look back at 19th century novelists, now we see half a dozen that we say are the best. But at the time, it would have been much harder to identify those. And I think the same is going to be true. Right now, you have artists that are maybe niche, that maybe takes a longer time to build to be universally seen as great. But I don't think that means that we're not having great music made.
That's happening today, whether it's underground or coming out from major labels, is as good as the music that was coming out in the early 90s or in the 80s, and on a frequent basis. I mean, I think that, there were times when every 2 weeks a record would come out and everyone would hear it and just think, wow, here's another great album, and everybody was listening to it. And I think that, and this is a conclusion, and anyone can make up their own mind, but I think that music is worse today. And there's so, I don't think it's really an hindsight bias. I mean, I just think that it objectively is, and that's my opinion on it. But I mean, look at how often there would be something coming out, and it would just be something new and interesting and great. And even if those people are making that music now, you'd think that it would be coming to the forefront. No matter how long it took, eventually everybody'd say, "Hey, this is awesome," and everyone would, people would love it. But there's just not a marketing mechanism or an R&D mechanism in existence that can do that.
Okay, I'll have a stab at this. Okay. I can certainly sympathise with the sentiment in the sense that yes, there's a hell of a lot of crap that's released these days, but there's been a hell of a lot of crap released from the year dot. Honestly, for every Dylan and we could go into a whole list of influential artists and great songwriters. For every one of those, there was manufactured bad pop, the 60s equivalent of boy bands and all that sort of stuff in those days, and there always will be. There will always be a market for lowest common denominator music, in the sense that there will be a market for more challenging songwriting. From a historical kind of point of view, I wish I had have lived through the late 60s and the early 70s from a musical perspective, purely on the basis that there was certainly a lot more, I think a lot more interesting things going on in society at large, which influences the songs that are written. But one thing, just to go back to what Terry was saying before, and also to what you're saying about it, whether labels are able to produce that kind of great quality music that that might be slow burning and take time to happen. Terry's right. The reduction in revenue does necessarily means that labels are increasingly risk averse. There are fewer and fewer signings. They require more of their artists in terms of having all their ducks in a row, having great management and a great following, and all these other things, have the boxes ticked before they'll sign on, whereas previously they would be more inclined to sign off on a chance. I think, Terry, that's probably a reasonably fair statement, but but I don't think that means that music doesn't, that challenging music doesn't get made. It just makes it more difficult for that artist to get to get signed. I think to build that hype and have all those ducks in a row often means that you probably create a product that is a little more mainstream accessible. I mean, even from the artist's perspective, I can tell you, you might be, you may well write a bunch of songs, but you're getting down to the nitty-gritty of pre-production, and you do these days think. You have at least some eye on what are we going to do with this record? Where's it going to go?
For the comment that for the reason I gave in my opening comments, you'll know that I can't answer your question whether music's better or not these days, but if you're right and it's not, I'll give an answer as to why. And I would put it simply as the amateurisation of the market as I look at it from the outside, which is a combination of actually just more people producing and there's less revenue for the venture capitalists to invest in and try and select and create quality, which actually means if you want to blame somebody, you're not going to blame the record labels for the crap if it's crap. You have to blame the fact that people aren't paying money for good and bad.
Thank you. So I think it's interesting, and I think it's good that we have musician and record guys to listen to what you have to say, and thank you. I think another point to ask is maybe to answer it from the other side, and to ask if music is worse today. If you're asking it to our side because there is less money flowing in, and with this I think we would not agree. We would say that it almost assumes that we need that money creates the talent, that we need a lot of investment in order to create talent, and this is something that intuitively we don't think is right, but also in terms of what we know about how the creative process is working is not how we know it is. There are different urges than money for people to create good music, and another interesting question is, you said that there used to be these great musicians that everyone used to like. One, what happened to the rest? Because in the old world, the rest would be not listened to at all. They will not be on MTV, they're gone. They're not on the main radio system, they're gone. What we allow today, and the non-label music allows today is to open and allow these guys to be listened to also. And if it's good or bad, I think it's a good thing, because one, I don't think we need someone to tell us what we listen to, and I don't think it's a goal for us that that there will be that music that everyone loves. I don't see why this should be a goal. We're a multicultural system where everyone likes different things, and I think the music world should reflect this. And I think the music world with a more diverse way of listening, of consumption, brings it up more than the old model.
I might agree with you, because today not as exciting as it might have been. I was fortunate to grow up in the 60s and 70s. My excitement for music was developed then, and so I suffered through the 80s, and felt the very same way that you do. I think it's in some ways it's cyclical, and I hope that song. There were some great songs, and there's some great songs today. I'm a huge fan of Mumford and Sons, which a year before their record broke, they were playing in a library in London. So great music is finding its way out, and great songwriting, but it goes in patterns. And how many love songs can you write? Apparently quite a few. How many breakup records can there be? The biggest selling record we have in the world is a breakup record. So artists finding a new way to say the same things has a lot to do with it. But I think the artists that are reticent to put their stuff out there, and one of the reasons perhaps is that it's in so many places that they fear the risk of place for them to sort of try it out and determine whether anybody's going to.
All right, one, I'll make this really quick.
One of the fundamental reasons why I'm making the point that we need to get the other stakeholders who are making some money from music involved in the front end process of making records, getting touring companies to get on board in terms of providing some of the capital, is for precisely the reason that making great records, and we were talking about this last night, making great records is an art form in and of itself. You absolutely need great songs. Songs are absolutely key, but making a great record and a great statement of those songs at a given point in time is hard work. It takes time, it takes expertise from a range of individuals, great experienced producers who can get the best out of you and tell you when what you're doing is crap. Engineers and that's just on the people side of things. Then you've got the overheads involved in maintaining the kinds of studios and spaces and equipment that can translate that in the best possible way. So I think it would be a great shame through the decline in revenue from sales, if the outcome of that is that we start to see a reduction in the number and quality of recordings that are made. There's money out there in the industry, so we need to be leveraging it for something that is there's a basic artistic good in making great records, I think.
I'm curious as to how, given the relatively free and relatively unregulated trade of music online, independent artists operating without a record label are able to protect their music from exploitation by third-party commercial interests, everything from TV ads to the theft and destruction of their music, a la what Vanilla Ice did with Under Pressure. How are you able to do that without sort of the strength and money of a record label behind you?
Just one. I'll only touch on one brief side of that, and someone else can deal with the rest of it. On the film and TV side, I can tell you that that production companies will make absolutely sure that they have all the necessary rights in and to the synchronised music that they use. That's a fundamental precondition for their financing to be signed off. So you'll find that, I mean, outside of low budget student films, outside of that world, film and television play by the rules because banks are underwriting them for a substantial amount of money. So that's as an artist, you want your song on film and television because you know that the rights are going to be cleared, and you have statutory license schemes that ensure that you are going to be paid. But in terms of the other stuff, someone else can address.
Just not so much other stuff, just to add to that though, I mean, put simply, the only people who don't pay by the rules are you. Everyone else does. So, some people say, oh, copyright's failing, copyright's a problem. Copyright's absolutely fine. I mean, maybe it's too long, maybe you need a little tweaking here and there. The problem is not with copyright, it's with the enforcement. And big entities don't want to get into copyright disputes, right? They don't want to be found out not having the license, so they'll get it. It's the individual consumer who's not playing by the rules. And so, don't be fooled just because you see a lot of music being traded online, think that the whole of the world that uses music is also infringing. No, it's only that individual trader online world. But it just happens to be a huge world, unfortunately.
I have a question follow-up to the pro side. So this whole debate's been very binary. It's like you have these valued producers and then these consumers, and then you guys work as intermediaries. But when we're thinking about why we still need record companies, how do you guys think about the third-party fair users? Like, how could you possibly justify the chilling effects of overbroad copyright enforcement on things like YouTube mashups? Could you try to justify how that could help the market by chilling otherwise completely allowable and legal fair use?
Well, I mean, you'll get vigorous shaking of the head in agreement with you there. That's a tweaking. I would call that a tweak, not a fundamental, but it's important tweaking. And you don't want to overreach. You don't want to get your exceptions under-applied or over-applied. And if there's been under or over-application, let's tweak and get that right. But I don't think we can then use that as an excuse for saying the thing that we value the most, we will pay the least for. I don't get it. I honestly just don't get it. Now, it's because I don't listen, right? But I look at this from the outside and I say, apparently, people really like music. There's a heck of a lot out there, and they like it so much they pay that for it. And I go, that makes no sense. There's something really weird going on here. Maybe it's a temporal thing. Maybe another generation of people won't see it that way. But my fear is that I don't get it. So we can't solve the problem by making fair use wider or better applied. That's not going to solve the key problem. The problem is a whole group of consumers decide they don't want to pay. And the technology which allowed records to be created in the first place evolved so well that it now allows records to be completely traded, as you say, traded online for nothing. And I don't get that. So, I agree with you about overreaching not good, but the big sort of overreach is the idea that consumers are going to not pay.
Okay, Tim, the floor. Is it on that point? Or?
Yes, it is.
Do you want to ask a question, then I'll give Tim the floor to
basically continue.
Well, a comment and then a question. First of all, it's a wonderful discussion. I think tremendous point you brought up, and I'm going to state right off the top that I think there is a place for record labels in the future. So that said, I think as a creator, I have some very hard questions of where it's going. But to get to Andrew's point, the Songwriters Association of Canada just did a survey in Canada, a third-party survey company across the country, and I imagine attitudes in many of the countries would be the same. The results of the survey were that 69% of the people who file would pay a monthly license fee to file share. Families, and that's probably a younger demographic. When we asked, when the third-party company that did the work out of Montreal asked families with teenage kids whether the parents would be willing to pay a license fee to allow kids to use their children to use a file share, it was up to 72%. So you've got almost 3/4 of the people. I think this notion that everybody out there is pirates is not really all that sustainable when you look at when you actually get some evidence. So I guess my argument to what you're saying is, if you don't offer people legal means to do what they want to do, they're going to find some other way to do it. So I don't know that the vilification of the consumer is necessarily the right road to walk down. We need to rethink that and offer people other choices before we come to that conclusion. Now, it may not eliminate 100% of the problem, but I'm sure we would all agree that if it eliminated 72% of the problem tomorrow, that would be a good start. And a lot of creators and record labels and rights holders would at least be compensated. So that's my comment about that. If I can make one other point, and this is Terry again. I think record labels do have a place, but I think there's some hard questions, and the word that's on my mind right now is Spotify. I wonder if some of the business models that are coming along now aren't decoupling the interests of creators with record labels, and that's been a big part of their argument. And the reason I bring up Spotify is that the labels own Spotify, or a piece of it. And yet the royalty stream that Spotify is paying to music creators is undetectable by humans using anything but the most sophisticated scientific equipment. It is absolutely, I think as a writer, my writer share is 0.00067 of a penny. I need to get 35 million streams a year to reach poverty. At the same time, the labels own part of the company. So the less they pay guys like me, the more money they take home. So I guess my question to you is, are the labels in these desperate times or difficult times emphasizing business models that do decouple the interests of creators with record labels? And if there are other business models out there that don't do that, so we'll talk to your about that these guys are working.
Tim, did you ask for what you wanted now, or do you want me to ask him for?
Yeah, I wanted to very quickly comment on this idea that if you're not charging for copies of music, that therefore the music doesn't have value. And as someone who gives away content for free for a living, I'm a journalist, blogger, I create content, it's supported by ads, and I don't view that fact, obviously I'd like people to give me more money, but I don't view the fact that that's our business model as indicating that my content is less valuable than somebody who is paying for the content. And this isn't even new, right? We had the broadcast television industry for 50 years has made billions of dollars by giving away television content and using it to sell ads. So I'm not sure exactly what the business model of music of the future is, but I don't think there's anything less dignified or less valuable about a model where you're selling something other than copies of the music. It's just different markets have different ways of monetization, and the internet is different from CDs, and so it might be that the best business model is something different.
Back to Eddie's point. Yep.
I'm still looking for my Spotify check as well, and I'm certain the investors are looking for their return. Spotify, Daniel was just telling me this morning, he visited with them. They're losing money. They won't lose money forever and stay in business, but they're losing money. So these models are developing so quickly, and this happened before.
You making up the volume? Yes.
We have the debate continually about the value of promotion versus a sale, and so to the point earlier, there are lots of things out there that we're willing to accept almost no money for in the name of promoting the song and hoping that it will drive people to buy it at some point. And at this point, I think Spotify sort of exists world. The models, the streaming models and the subscription models and those sorts of things, I think are becoming at least somewhat welcomed by the major record labels and the music industry. And that's why they're investing considerable amount of money in seeing them developed. No one is receiving a return at this point ahead of the creators, and I don't think anyone who really loves music and works with artists and writers wants to see that happen. But the checks are very, very slow coming, and you know, I would it's a good thing you have someone trying to collect for you, because I think the muscle that can be applied to make sure that money comes in is important when there are 100 Spotifys and, you know, they're breaking out all over. But for now, this is a very early stage development moment for how music is consumed. We love our consumers, ones that pay, and some of them that don't. You know, they're developing themselves.
So we have time for the last question, and then we'll ask for a closing statement. Your hand was up first. Go ahead. Sorry.
I have a comment and a question. My comment is that I completely disagree with the premise that the deterioration of the old model has caused consistently bad music that is commercially viable. To use an example, I'll use Radiohead's In Rainbows. Just a few years ago, they released an album on their own where they encouraged their fans to pay what they want for the album. And they made millions of dollars that went directly to the artists. So, you know, you might not like Radiohead, but critics disagree with them. It was the top album to a lot of critics that year, and a lot of critics would say it's on par with Blonde on Blonde or 12 tracks or any albums old Dylan albums. My question is are your opinions about the necessity of record labels consistent across the board, or do you think the utility of record labels is dependent on a number of factors like the genre of music, the relative status of the artist, or the particular artistic vision of that artist? Let's go first.
I'll have a quick stab at that. I'll say this partially against the topic that I'm, or the side of the debate that I'm making, but I'll just make this point. I'll just make this point that Radiohead are one of my favourite artists of all time. In Rainbows was a great record. That method of releasing that record was novel and worked to great effect for them. Do I think that they could have done that on their first record? Absolutely not. It helps when you've got 6 records behind you, one of which is OK Computer. You know, you can kind of A, afford to do that, and B, have the kind of worldwide critical acclaim that allows you to do that. But to now say something on our side of, in support of our proposition, I guess I would say that those kinds of models with they create hype, and again this comes back to this kind of discussion. People will get involved and support a record like that if there is interest in it. If no one knows about that artist, no one's going to make any money out of it at all. But if that artist has critical acclaim, or at least has some interest and hype about it, then that kind of model can really work. I don't think that the label system is the only way to develop that hype and to capitalise on that. I think I think increasingly over time there will be other stakeholders who will come into play and who will be able to leverage that. So I think there's a future for alternative models to push that kind of release, but that point about having hype is the key.
Thank you. Quickly, record labels
aren't necessary. No business is necessary other than to the degree that it can add value. So if labels don't evolve and continue to add value to process, then they'll play. And so there's no necessity necessarily. There's only practice and ability to provide something both to the artist and to the consumer that record label's viable.
Quickly, then we'll
Okay, thank you. So I agree with Terry that record labels are not necessary, and and to your question, I would like to encourage you to make the distinction between record labels and the expertise of some expertise and some function that record labels are doing, which we will need things to be we will need music to be somehow out from the artist's drawer to you as a consumer. These are things that needs to be done in this, but the fact that we need these functions do not mean that we need record labels. And indeed, as you said, good artists or established artists like Radiohead can go with a pay-as-you-wish model, and others can go with a blanket license, and others can go to Spotify, especially if they don't have a record label that will take a cut. Maybe they'll get even more than 0.00067 cents. So in this sense, we will need the functions, and we will need the other things, but there can definitely be models, and there definitely are models that can do it without what the shell of a record label that does everything as a bundled service that is basically imposed on you as an artist, and you can't really choose, as you're in the center, choosing what functions you need when.
You can get a form online that will replace your lawyer as well, so I just point that out.
On those two great notes, we move to closing statements. You can start thinking about the two votes that you will have to cast.
Yeah, thank you. There's a great, well, firstly, I'm just going to do it to Andrew, I better do it to my own side too. I'm sure Terry didn't mean to say record labels aren't necessary. I'm sure what he meant to say was they're not mandatory. Nobody mandates them. There's a great quote that's attributed to a French author, which in English goes, if God didn't exist, it would be necessary for us to create him. At the risk of raising record labels to a deity level, I would say that we can apply that quote here, that if record labels didn't exist, given the fundamental, important consumer benefit, creative benefit role they play, it would be necessary for us to create them. But we don't need to create them because they do exist. And the reality is, I think, though, that we just need to be very careful here. There is a, the one bit of music I know is a quote, from a line from a song which goes, don't it always seem to go that we don't know what we've got till it's gone. If record labels go, and beware here, they're a canary in the gold mine, if they go in the coal mine, if they go, that's telling us something very odd has happened, something very inappropriate has happened. We don't want that to occur.
Thanks. So I think the basic question is not, are there going to be people to do the things that labels currently do? Some of them, like the shipping the plastic disc around, they'll stop doing. But many of the things, clearly somebody needs to do that stuff. Somebody needs to record the album, somebody needs to help promote it, etc. But the question is, does it make sense to have a vertically integrated firm that does all of these things, or does it make sense to have a more decentralized model? And one of my favorite thinkers about this kind of thing is Clay Christensen, who talked about the innovator's dilemma, which is the idea that if you have a company that's used to doing things in a certain way with a high cost structure, to doing things in a a sort of premium way, often what will happen is you'll have a new technology come along that's much cheaper, and it's very, very difficult to the firm that's used to doing things the expensive way to do it the cheaper, nimble way. And most of the time what happens is those firms go out of business. Microcomputers replace mini computers, Google is sort of replacing Microsoft, etc. And so this is not a bad thing. This is just companies are good at certain things and not good at other things. Record labels were good at shipping CDs around the country. They're not particularly good at marketing music online, and that's fine. New institutions will grow up that will be similar to labels in some ways, but very different in many other ways, and I don't think it's necessarily reasonable to call those new institutions record labels.
Right. Thank you. Where to start? I think there's been a lot of talk on the other side about the idea that these things could happen. And truth be told, we've had a digital unregulated marketplace for a very long time that could have allowed these different models to flourish. And the fact is, they haven't. 5% of songs online account for 80% of downloads. 75,000 albums released in the United States last year. 60,000 sold fewer than 100 copies. I don't think we're reaching a point of progress. I think we're reaching a point where a very strange thing is happening. happening. Record labels are continuing to produce and promote and distribute the most popular content in the world, and yet their declining revenues speak for themselves. So I think we need to not confuse the idea that there can be competition in the marketplace with the idea that record labels are somehow now irrelevant. If anything, with so many millions of songs and artists online, there's a growing digital cacophony, and you need a record label to really, more than ever before, break through that. And that takes money, it takes dollars, it takes investment, it takes hardworking people who get up every day and work for you. And so, you know, in a lot of ways, I think record labels are more important today than they ever have been before, and I think that they're, the fact that record label content continues to be the most popular is a very good indicator of just how much that's true.
Okay, so I couldn't agree more with your point that it's more you know, it's more important than ever that we have hardworking people who are good at what they do to get up and champion the cause for you know, for artists to break through the noise floor of the product that's out there. What I dispute is whether that is solely the domain of record labels or whether that's a task of the broader industry in general. You know, the reality is, and again I come back to my 2 points, as a developing artist, I want people on board with money and influence. And influence is the key point. I think you know, so much of this stuff is kind of it feeds on itself. You know, you'll have a bit of success in one aspect, whether it be a good sync, which then builds into options for, you know, a high profile for touring and all that sort of stuff. I want to see my record label, you know, whether it be my record label or my publisher, my touring company, you know, my sync agents, I want them all sitting down at a table having a conversation about how can we build this brand, how do we build this product, how do we maximise what each skill set that these people have, how can we leverage one to roll into the other and to build the pie. And that kind of model can work. I mean, in a sense, that's kind of the way that it works already. But I think with a great investment in capital from other aspects of the industry, there's a better chance of it being sustainable over time.
We've managed to get a great
deal of agreement out of our opposition with our points, and I think the notion that having the existence of record labels reduces choice, either for the artists or creators or for the consumers, is a flawed argument. No one is calling me every day to ask me what they should buy or listen to. Anyone is telling you what you should or shouldn't listen to. Matter of fact, the choices are so vast now that it's very difficult to find what you might want. Finding a trusted source for your to help you filter music and to find the things that you enjoy and fit your lifestyle is really the key element. And I think the consumer have so many choices in that regard, whether it's the local radio station or a blogger. So, you know, there's this notion that there's filtering, and, you know, certainly labels take on things that they believe that they can be successful with. But those artists have chosen to be a part of a major system or part of an independent system, or to do it on their own. And I think there are different fits for each style of music, and each artist's desire with what they want to do with their career and how hard they want to work at it and where they want their music to be heard. So, so record labels are a choice in that sense, and I think a very good choice for an artist that wants a career that is highly successful.
Thank you.
I get the last word. So, so what is this debate about? The debate is about how the industry should be built. What is in the center? What is in the periphery? And while that side of the house offers that the record labels are in the center, when artists flowing in and content flowing out, and this is the pillar of the system, what this side of the house offers is to put the artists in the center, and as Andrew said before, let them work with the function that they need. Let let us have the people that they want, but have them in the center, and have them give the music for you, not as part of a huge system where they're not in the center. And to choose between these alternatives, I suggest to compare the benefits and harms. So what are the benefits of having a record label? The benefit used to be selection, it used to be using them as venture capitals, and it used to be for distribution. As we showed you, for distribution we do not need them anymore. We do not want and we do not need them as a selection mechanism. We did not see that it brings us any better solutions, and we do not need them as venture capitalists once there are different alternative business models that we did talk about in the model, if it's Radiohead or if it's the ability for blanket licensing, and if it's other possible models. But what are the harms of having them as the main pillar as opposed to the artists? The harms is, as we said, a very centralized industry that doesn't allow a lot of diversity of music. It doesn't allow, it creates a lot of barriers to entry, not only to artists that do not get a record deal, but also they do not get, but also to new technologies, and it harms the interest of artists and their incentives to create. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So I will ask you in a second to join me in thanking our debaters before your vote. Many of you came in late, and I suspect some of you did not pick up clickers. If you don't have a clicker, this is the time to get one. And if you do have a clicker, please stay where you are and join me in thanking our panelists. I will now give them a little memento. I guarantee you this debate on YouTube will beat I'm a Barbie Girl by Aqua by quite a bit. So here's a little souvenir. I'm sorry to do this rather informally, but thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Tim. I'm not sure this will make it through security for you to verifying, but probably will. Thank you, Terry. It's not loaded. It is not loaded. So we are now going to proceed to the two votes. The first one I will show the result. The second I will just announce who the winner is. Let me just explain what the prize is. So Vanderbilt had 10 crystal vases made with specials, and this is the last one. So this is going to be, this is a collector's edition, anyway, hopefully they'll find it's a good home. All right, so prepare to vote, but do not press the clicker, please, before I tell you to. You have three choices. Do we still need record companies? Yes. No, not sure. Again, do not push the button until I tell you to. Polling is now open. Ten seconds. Five seconds. And I will now show the results. We still need record companies by 54 to 35 with 10% not sure. So a very interesting result, rather clear, which again is not, this is not a vote on the quality of the debaters, it's obviously on the proposition. The debaters, as we will all agree, were fantastic. And now is your time to reward the best of them, which will be a hard choice. Again, do not press your clicker until I tell you to. So make sure you get the numbers right. So pick the person, and polling is now open. $20 seconds. $10 seconds. Polling is now closed. Before I announce the winner, I do want to thank a number of people. This is like on TV when they say, we're going to tell you after the commercial. So there are a number of people who really made this possible. I've already mentioned Professor Christie from Melbourne, who helped me organize the debate. Obviously, our superb cast of debaters. This debate, guarantee you, will get a lot of attraction once it gets posted to YouTube, and I'll be curious to see how many people were watching it live. But you can imagine the amount of work that goes into this. Susan Button is somebody who really, really deserves a major round of applause. Susan really organized everything. I want to thank also our IT people, BC, on behalf of your entire team. Thank you. And our events people, Kelly, and the people who put all this nice food out there also, please. Okay, so close to a four-way tie, but I am pleased to present the last of the crystal vases of the Vanderbilt collection to Lital Helman. Again, a fantastic crew of debaters. We decided not to post the result, but believe me, it's close. It was a very, very good debate. Thank you for coming, and thank you again to all our debaters. Please put your clickers back on the way out. We need them.